Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dr. Jones Optimization Academy, where I get to interview some of my favorite innovators in medicine, health, fitness, and beyond. And I'm super excited for part two of my interview with Dr. Kris Wusterhausen. Got it right again.
Nailed it two times.
Twice in a row. And Dr. Kris is a board-certified family practice physician and is certified in age management medicine. He's the founder of the Research Clinic in Weatherford, Texas, and a new research clinic in Nashville, Tennessee. So if you're in Tennessee, check that on out. And Dr. Kris is passionate about helping patients optimize their health and improve their physical and mental state. Welcome back for part two. Dr. Kris, how's it going?
Thanks, Dr. Jones. All's going well.
Appreciate it. So if you guys missed part one, we talked about mitochondrial dysfunction and a very, very powerful peptide called ModSC. So if you've not listened to part one, I suggest you maybe don't stop listening to this, but when you're done with this, go back and listen to part one, because I think you'll be very fascinated to learn about ModSC and how it can help optimize your health. In part two, we're going to talk about Dr. Kris's favorite peptides. And I'm excited to ask him the question, one of my favorite questions to ask people when they're into peptides, but we'll get into that. So, but first off, with peptides, it's just, when I first got out of med school, we talked about this in part one, and it was like kind of a hush whisper of these weirdly named compounds that can help people out. And now we're a few years later. Do you think we're in the golden age of peptides now?
Oh, I think we're definitely entering the golden age of peptides. I went and gave a lecture on Saturday at a hormone conference, and they kind of threw me in at the end to talk about peptides. And I thought it was funny because they threw me in at 5:00. The lecture started at like 8:30, and they had a cocktail hour in between. And I'm like, good Lord, no one's going to come back for my lecture. I'm like, I'm done for. And do you know that like 90% of the people came back? And when it was all said and done and they did the reviews for the conference, what was the majority is they wanted more peptide information. Providers are starved right now for peptide information, and they want to know more. I was at a conference, like I want to say it was around January or something. I was speaking, and it was a hormone conference because I speak at a decent amount of hormone conferences. And the doctor didn't know what I did. He's like, yeah, I've heard about these peptides, but that's a dying industry. It's come and went. And I'm like, you were so wrong about that. We're just getting started. We're just gaining steam. Look at these new, like, actual traditional pharmaceutical meds that are starting to come out that are peptides. Hell, most providers don't even know that insulin's a peptide, right? And so, yeah, I don't think we've hit the golden age, but I think we're entering it, because I think the future for peptides are just so bright for helping our patients.
I agree with you. We're just getting started.
Yeah, we are. We're just tiptoeing into it.
I think the information is getting out there, and there are new peptides coming out, still being developed. And I think that the ways we can apply the ones that are pre-existing, I think we're just hitting the tip of that iceberg, and how we can create protocols and using peptides together, not in the same syringe, but in the same protocol. I think we're advancing that. Now, that being said, because peptides are increasing in notoriety and information, and people are excited to learn more, I put this in our pre-outline, man, and I'm still trying to figure this out. I just don't know why people are still buying peptides off the internet and Amazon. And I don't get it, just because it literally says on the vial, not for human consumption, research only. Go buy this, and then, people will buy them, put sterile water in there, and then literally inject them in their body. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like and I've been trying to wrap my mind around it. I don't know if is it costs. And really, yes, they're cheaper, but a lot of times when you look at the volume in these research peptides, by the time they buy enough for it to be efficacious, you've almost spent the same amount of money you would have paid getting it from a provider. Is it convenience because you don't have to, go through the process of having a medical appointment? I don't know, but it's weird to me, man. I can't put another word on it.
I think it's a combination of all those things. I think it's cost. It's the fact that they feel like they can do it on their own. These research peptide companies won't give any guidance on how to actually use the products, right? And so, as you and I talked about, then they try to reach out to us to have us guide. It's like they want us to take the liability of then guiding them through these peptides. I'm actually even further surprised by how many providers out there that actually use these companies to actually, have have their patients go get their peptides there. I'm with you. I'm not personally injecting anything into my body that I cannot feel extremely safe, that I know the purity of that product. But I don't think it'll ever stop. There's always going to be that. It's also kind of like the guy that's willing to go to the back of the gym and get their advice from some guy at the back of the gym and something that he pulls out of their duffel bag and like, here, take this home and inject it. Okay, cool. I mean, I guess human nature never ceases to surprise us at times. I guess the good news is there are a plethora of patients that value our opinions and guiding them through this process properly.
What gym do you go to where there's a guy in the back with a duffel bag full of? I want to go to this guy.
Well, it occurs. I at least get one new patient a week that's like, hey, I don't want to admit this, but I'm like, taking a few anabolics. So yeah, good news is I have my own gym. So
okay, good. So you're the guy.
We don't have the duffel bag.
It is you. It is you, sir. You are the guy in the back of the gym now. Back of your own gym with the mini fridge of peptides back there.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, no, and I try to, in a very kind way, just try to nudge people away from that, because again, these things potentially have endotoxins in there, so things that are toxic to the body that can actually make your immune system go haywire. And then there's the whole, and I think it's the whole, and there was a lecture that I believe it was Edmund Lee and another peptide society. They talked about why not to do this, and they mentioned this whole acid exchange thing, and basically it was acid exchange, and it was also the issue of TFAs, and this is a chemical used in the production of peptides, and these things need to be cleaved and exchanged before they go to your compound pharmacy. And if that's toxic to the liver. The liver is not having that, right? And all these things here. So it's risky. And then the other thing is you don't know exactly what's in it. Yes, it may be BPC 157, but what else?
Right.
So, and that's just risky. And I don't know. And again, we try to counsel people like, hey, that's just risky. It's almost like would you get this from there? Kind of thing like that. Exactly. It's almost like if I was trying to fix my car and my car was damaged, I probably would go to a boat repair place, and it's just like, hey, we don't really do cars here, but we got some parts.
Yeah. Go to your local chop shop or something. Well, it's a lot like supplements, and I always explain supplements in America. It's practically an unregulated market. When you go to this research purposes, I actually had one patient bring veterinary only. It said on the bottle, so it was for animal use only, and we can guarantee that that's unregulated. When they're doing the research purposes only, and like I tell them, hey, this product may be as good as what I get. I doubt it. I very much doubt it, but I don't have any proof one way or the other. And if you have side effects, if you have problems, I don't know if that was the peptides problem. Most likely it's not, because as well as I do that most good peptides properly produced don't have a lot of side effects, right? That's what makes it quite unique. At least not severe adverse events. I always tell my patients, I can prescribe you an antibiotic that's probably going to have more side effects than a peptide real fast. So yeah, I just, and I've had a few patients that will go and do that on their own and take, and then they come back and mixed results and it's just, I find it so difficult to manage those type of patients, because you just can't guarantee they're doing what they're supposed to be. And it's just like supplements. I always say, hey, if I recommend it, I need to know that we're using a quality supplement, because, there was a study years back that showed that, they randomly pulled supplements and tested them, and the majority of them had little to nothing that actually was on the label, and so we just have to know that when we prescribe something, they're actually getting it. It's like hormones. It's why I don't like generic hormones, right? Generics plus or minus 30% batch to batch. And so I got to know that if I'm giving you 100 milligrams of progesterone, we're getting 100 milligrams of progesterone. Same way with peptides. I need clean, pure, safe peptides, and I can't guarantee that with those research peptides.
Exactly. So I hope that people can learn from this conversation here to not do that, and see a provider who is trained in peptides, who understands peptides, who's also getting their peptides from a reputable source. Super important. You don't need two doctors to tell you that. You should know. Yeah. But just in case you do, we're here to tell you this. So here is the question, man. So let's just say hypothetically, you decided that you want to be one of those people that want to get on one of those rocket ships and go to be the first to Mars, and you're packing your bag, and they're like, all right, you You can't take a lot with you. You can take 5 peptides. I mean, you'd want other stuff. You can have your deodorant and toothpaste, all that, but you get 5 peptides.
Okay.
Which 5 are you taking with you?
Well, you probably know the first two that I'm going to say. It's TA1 and BPC. I think those are mainstays, and I think that those would be right away a couple that I would choose. I am a huge proponent of GHRP, GHRH's, GHRPs. I love CJC IPA. It is a constant for the most part. I stop it occasionally, but for the most part, it's something that I do routinely. So for me, a GHRH, GHRP, hopefully that counts as one, since it's combination. So that would be my first 3. Then I'd probably have to start thinking a little bit. I love semaglutide. Although if I'm on a desert island and if I don't have anything to eat, I probably don't have to worry about it quite as much. But I'm going to assume that this island is pretty well stocked. So because I am high risk for cardiac disease, I think I would take semaglutide because it not only helps with appetite and satiety, but it's so good for the brain and the heart. I think that I would go with semaglutide as my 4th. And, I think I'd have to throw in the one that you and I just talked about. I think I'd have to throw in MOTC as my 5th. I think that would probably be my top 5 for me personally. Because in that setting, I don't have to worry about concentrating so much. I do love dihexa, periodically for mental clarity, but I think that would be the 5 I would choose.
The sheer disappointment in my mind, because those are my top 5. I was hoping we could have changed, I was
we could argue or something about it.
There's no argument. It's like, yeah, I guess I'll take that too, so it's definitely.
Well, I mean, how can you beat TA1 and BPC, right? I mean, everybody needs it. It has no side effects to speak of. Everybody tolerates it great. I mean, the immune modulation you get from TA1 is amazing. BPC, just its overall wellness and anti-inflammation aspect, gut health. And I call GHRH's, GHRPs in my office a shotgun peptide. I just feel like it's like, I always say it's like vitamin D receptors. We got them all over our body. GHRH and GHRPs do a little something positive all over our body, right? I just think they're amazing for sleep and body composition and inflammation and healing. And then you and I kind of, I think, exhausted MOTC earlier, and semaglutide or GLP-1s, let's just say that, are absolutely a mainstay in our practice. I just think there's so many positive characteristics of GLP-1 agonist, specifically semaglutide. So yeah, I think it'd be a pretty easy choice for those 5. And actually, we said it at the conference, but I really think that, I talked to a lot of providers who are getting into peptide medicine, and they really struggle on kind of where to start. And I'm like, man, if you just started with TA1, BPC, GHRH, GHRP, and maybe semaglutide, you could do such amazing things for 99% of your patients, and you'll look like a rock star. You will get such better outcomes, and you'll get a cult following compared to your counterparts in your area, which is just an amazing thing. I think there's this thought to be in peptides, you got to be this prescriber of 15 different peptides. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying, I think you can do a hell of a lot of good with 4, 5, 6 peptides for your patients, and just know them well.
Exactly. I think that's great. So, and that's when I first started, I was like, I want all the peptides here. And I had my laundry list, and you realize that it really came down to about 5 or 6 that we were using all the time. And I was like, okay, let's get good at these. And how, not only good at them, hey, what if we do CJC, 1295 Ipamorelin at night and put on BPC in the morning, or BPC 157 2 or 3 hours before that, because it get into the whole increase in growth hormone receptors. So I am going to kind of step us back, because I would hope that someone who's I think I'm on like podcast number 39 or 40. I would hope someone who's listening would know a little bit more about peptides. But I want to kind of step back a little bit, because again, me and you have been doing this for a while, so we can say TA1 or GHRPs, and it's like the alphabet, but there may be some people out there who are not familiar. So let's start with the GHRPs. Now, when we say GHRP and GHRHs, we're talking about growth hormone, correct? Sure. And so for those who don't know, GHRP, growth hormone releasing peptide, and GHRH, growth hormone releasing hormone. So with that being said, there are quite a few of them that still have access to your CJC 1295, ipamorelin, tesamorelin, MK677. Do you have a favorite of those, or?
Well, certainly my favorite CJC 1295. I just think it's so well tolerated. It works so well with ipamorelin. It's typically pretty easy to get. Most of your good compounding peptide pharmacies are going to have the CJC ipamorelin. I think it's cost effective as well. So I think it kind of hits all the important stuff. Sometimes I like to do a round of like tesamorelin, ipamorelin. Using tesamorelin as that GHRH. But for the most part, my favorite one is CJC for sure.
Okay, gotcha. And so usually when I talk to patients about those two peptides, I'll say, hey, they work together, they work synergistically, it makes your pituitary gland release more growth hormone, and that's great for sleep, exercise recovery, body composition, brain function, injury recovery. And it's like, oh, that's great. Tell me more, right? Because again, that's the whole pleiotropic thing, right? And that my top 5, when I was creating my list, I was like, okay, I want these peptides to do more than one thing. Because if it's just very kind of monotherapy, then I'm going to need more than 5. So the next one that you mentioned was TA1, and that is, I kind of took the ball and ran with it last time, so I'll kind of let you run with that one.
Yeah,
so TA1, that's
thymus alpha 1, and it's made in our thymus gland, which depletes as we age, mainly, causes us to make more T cells and B cells, which are so important in our overall immune system. And one thing that most providers get wrong is they say like it's it's upregulating our immune system. That's absolutely not correct. We don't want an upregulated immune system. As I tell my patients, that would be like having a Lamborghini. I want your immune system to be like a Lamborghini. When you hit the pedal, it hauls ass, right? But if I took my Lamborghini and stuck it on 8,000 RPMs and just left it there, that's going to be bad ultimately. So, it modulates the immune system. It makes it more reactive, more responsive. I love cars. So, I'm always kind of putting it into a car analogy. That's what we're trying to do, is make your immune system like a race car so that it works properly. And then when we shut it down, it shuts down and everything's good. It is the one I tell my patients that there's really no known side effects. I don't know about you, but I've never had a patient have a side effect from thymus alpha 1. Amazing in treating those patients, upregulating that immune system in patients with COVID or COVID long haulers. There's no doubt that my patients that when I can get TA1 that do much better, whenever they have those type of acute viral illnesses. So yeah, I love it. It's an amazing peptide.
Indeed it is. Now, BPC 157, or body protection compound 157, when we talk about that, we're talking about a peptide that can accelerate healing, reduce inflammation, actually help with reducing pain. But I'm not gonna let you cheat, because if you had to choose in your pack of 5, would you take injections with you? Would you take the capsules?
I would take the capsules, and only because I love injectable. I find it most useful in those patients with acute musculoskeletal injuries. But I'm assuming if I'm on this desert island, I'm probably rested, relaxed, and overall good. And I like the neuroprotection aspect of it very much. And so I also like the gut health orally a little bit better than the injectable. So I personally would take the oral.
Perfect. Yeah. Let's see. Then you mentioned semaglutide. The best weight loss peptide. I mean, I feel like I like to say that I've got almost 100% success rate for semaglutide weight loss. It just depends on when, right? What I mean by that is that we start the dose really low and then we increase it every 4 weeks or so. And when we get to the dose where I call it the Goldilocks, the green zone, where it's like, hey, here's your dose, you're losing weight, your appetite's good, you're not having any side effects, and you're there. So, and that's different for everyone. I mean, so for those who are not familiar with semaglutide, it's a GLP-1 receptor agonist. So basically helps your body with glucose regulation, appetite, cravings, and also inflammation, which makes it amazing for anti-aging. So inflammation is implicated in all these chronic diseases. But again, it's hard on the gut. And so we start the dose really low with that, because again, I see nausea and constipation. I've seen a couple diarrhea, a little bit of reflux, but nausea is probably the biggest one. I'll say constipation number 2. I don't know if you've seen any different
Seen a little bit, maybe more reflux, but I typically get the reflux. It's always been males, and it's usually my truly bigger males that have a lot of weight to lose. And I think they just have a lot of, and I think that the one thing that maybe we were doing wrong early on with semaglutide is just throwing everybody on semaglutide. And now with some of those bigger patients, maybe taking them through a little bit of a detox program, actually working on their gut health a little bit more before we start it. I think that might be wise. I think we could cut that down in some of those really overweight patients. Most of my patients that are coming in are not what I would call obese. They're just, have gained 20 pounds, 25 pounds through the years. But I was just, before I jumped on with you, one of my young ladies at work here has walked by, and I said, wow, her name's Janelle. I was like, man, Janelle, like, how much weight have you lost? And she's like 54 pounds on semaglutide, and that's been over about 6 months. And and I always ask my patients what I really love about semaglutide. Well, there's many things I love about semaglutide, and I'm sure, Greg, your patients tell you this too, is the weight loss is not painful. Like, because of that appetite suppression and increased fullness or satiety, they don't feel like they're actually missing out on anything. So they don't sit like they're sitting there watching someone eat, like, God, I'm starving over here, because, what's the traditional way we try to lose weight in America? You just try to eat less. And as I always joke, you end up in the pantry 2 hours later eating ho-hos because you're starving. You don't go through that with semaglutide. It's just amazing. And like I was telling a provider that this weekend that wanted to start semaglutide, and they're like, how do I market? I said, dude, just treat 5 of your best customers, call them in, say, hey, I want to treat you. The people that trust you, and they're going to bring you, each one of them will bring you 3, 4, 5 people, because that's how successful they are. And I'm sure you've seen that in your practice as well.
It's been great. Now, personally, I'm very sensitive to it. Like, I cannot gain weight on it. Like, I will try to have it where, like, even when I was on the doses that were lower, just for more anti-aging and wellness, I mean, I'm talking about 0.1 milligram, 0.12 milligrams. And I started dropping weight like a rock. And I'm like, this is such a low dose.
Wow, that's tiny.
I know, I want to eat more. And I'm trying to bring PEG, mechanical growth factor in there. I'm trying to do all these, like, I'm just like, all right, I got to stop with this. I got to stop. Yeah. This for me, it was just too much. I'm just sensitive to it. And then, and I don't know if you've seen this, and this is kind of, it's not a HIPAA violation. I'm talking about myself. My pancreatic enzymes like went kind of high, even on that low dose. And I was like, okay, I got to back off a little bit. So now I do every other week at a really low dose of it, because I really don't want to give up on those, the anti-aging benefits of it, but I'm sensitive to it. So because of that, I was just thinking about bringing my top 5. I may have to do an audible and take semaglutide off and put GHK copper in there. I think that one is, for those of you who don't know about GHK copper, great for, and most people know GHK copper for hair, skin, nails, all that, more of the aesthetics world, but it's amazing for inflammation and anti-cancer and for healing.
Yeah. Wound healing, everything. Yeah.
Amazing.
No doubt.
So that would be.
I'm like you. I take it every 2 or 3 weeks. It does actually give me reflux at higher doses. So I don't respond to that low of a dose, but I usually respond to about 0.3 to 0.5 milligrams is kind of the dose that really works for me. But I found if I go over 0.5 milligram, that not nausea, but actual reflux starts to kick up. A reflux is something I've kind of, if I let my body fat even remotely start to come up, my reflux comes up with it. So that's a good advocate for me to just keep my body fat down. So anyway, but yeah.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Now we're not going to.
Amazing peptide though.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's great. Now we're not going to beat you guys back up with Mod SC. We did a whole podcast on that. So Mod SC is in our top 5. You got to just take our word for it. It's in the top 5. Listen to part 1. So man, this is fun. I'm glad we agreed on that.
Yeah, I can't believe we had the same top 5.
Oh man, I wonder how many people we asked that question to. It may be very similar, unless they're going to come out of left field with something. They're all great, but come out of left field with that's a kind of a left field peptide I don't do a lot of.
I don't know. Maybe they throw like Selenk or something in
there. Maybe a DSIP, which is great. It's great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking DSIP, but it's not like something I would keep.
DSIP is great, but it is kind of, for me at least, it's a little bit of a hit or miss peptide, and so I like peptides that I always say I like them like baseball players. I like high batting averages, and so but DSIP can be very useful. It's not my favorite, but when used correctly, it can be good.
Yeah, and sleep is my struggle. Sleep is my kryptonite, and there have been some times I've thrown some DSIP in the mix and slept through the night. Like, oh, this is great. 2 days later, do it again. I'm just staring at the ceiling. Like, thanks, DSIP. Thank you for that. Thanks for giving me false hope.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, man, this has been great, man. I appreciate you making time to do the shows here, part 1 and part 2. For those who did not listen to part 1, if people want more information about your clinic and your journey and the services that you all provide, where can they find you?
Yeah, easiest way, just go to our website, theresearchclinic.com. We're also hopefully next week or two launching a secondary website that's going to be Dr. Kris, KRIS.life. And so my web team says it's just about to launch, and that's just going to be more about my journey and myself. Nice. But the easiest way is theresearchclinic.com.
Perfect. And that is research, is it RESURGE?
Correct. Clinic.com. Yep.
That's it. So check it out, guys, when you get an opportunity. And thank you, Dr. Kris, man. I can't thank you enough for making time for this. And I guess for those, we're recording this here on September 1st. I guess we will see each other in person at the Peptide World Congress in October in Vegas. If you haven't got your tickets out there, y'all, go to ssrpinstitute.org.
There you go. Okay.
Get more information on that. So that will be in Vegas here in October, and that's going to be an exciting time. Dr. Kris is speaking. Yours truly. They gave me 30 minutes. I hope man, watch out. I might get uninvited.
It'll be action packed.
Definitely, man. But hey, thanks again, and we will talk to you soon. And we'll see you all out there listening very soon as well.